There's a reason you feel tempted to go back, but there's a greater reason you must not. Pause for a moment and be honest with yourself. That pull you've been feeling lately is not random. That quiet thought that says, maybe it wasn't so bad, maybe you overreacted, maybe you should return. It didn't appear out of nowhere. It surfaced at a very specific time, and timing always matters. You walked away from something, an old environment that once felt normal but slowly began to limit you. An old relationship that felt familiar but required you to compromise pieces of yourself. An old version of who you used to be, smaller, quieter, more uncertain. Walking away was not impulsive. It cost you comfort. It cost you familiarity. It may have even cost you certain connections. But you left for a reason. And now, as the path forward stretches in front of you, unclear, unfamiliar, demanding, the past suddenly looks softer, warmer, safer. The chaos you escaped begins to feel organized in your memory. The tension you endured begins to feel manageable. Familiarity begins disguising itself as peace. That is where the real conflict begins. Why does the past look safer the closer you get to your next level? Why does regression feel easier precisely when growth starts stretching you? Why does the mind romanticize what once suffocated you the moment the future requires courage? Because growth is uncomfortable. Expansion is unfamiliar. Elevation demands transformation, and transformation forces you to release identities you once relied on for survival. The closer you move toward your next level, the more your mind tries to negotiate with comfort. It whispers that at least you knew how things worked back there. At least you understood the rules. At least you weren't navigating uncertainty. But what you call safety was often limitation. What you call peace was often stagnation. What you call stability was often restriction. And this is where identity becomes critical. The chosen one is always tested right before elevation. Not with obvious obstacles, but with subtle invitations to retreat. Not with loud opposition, but with quiet nostalgia. The final test before ascension is rarely a dramatic battle. It is often a simple question. Will you go back? Going back does not always look like physically returning. Sometimes it looks like lowering your standards. Sometimes it looks like re-engaging with patterns you outgrew. Sometimes it looks like doubting the growth you fought so hard to achieve. The temptation to go back is often the final test. It appears right when you are tired, right when you feel uncertain, right when the new path feels lonely. It invites you to exchange long-term expansion for short-term relief. It asks you to trade destiny for familiarity. But you did not walk away by accident. You were moved forward for a reason, and the discomfort you feel now is not proof you made the wrong decision. It is proof that you are stepping into territory that requires strength. This is your turning point. If this message finds you at the right time, like this video, share it with someone who needs this reminder, and subscribe to this channel for more empowering revelations. The past has not improved. It has not evolved. It has not suddenly become healthier, safer, or more aligned with who you are now. The only thing that has changed is your distance from it. And distance has a way of softening memory. It blurs the edges. It quiets the tension. It edits out the exhaustion. Over time, what once felt heavy can begin to feel manageable in hindsight. But you are not remembering it accurately. You are remembering it selectively. You are remembering isolated moments of comfort without remembering the consistent undercurrent that made you leave. You are recalling the familiar routines without recalling the frustration. You are replaying certain highlights while subconsciously muting the arguments, the stagnation, the compromise, the slow erosion of your standards. You left for a reason. At the time, that reason was strong enough to override fear. It was strong enough to push you through uncertainty. It was strong enough to make you choose discomfort over familiarity. That decision did not come lightly. It came after reflection, after endurance, after giving more chances than you probably should have. Now that you are removed from the emotional intensity of that moment, your mind is attempting to renegotiate. The human mind prefers familiarity, even if that familiarity was toxic, even if it was limiting, even if it required you to shrink. Familiarity reduces cognitive effort. It reduces unpredictability. It reduces the constant recalibration that comes with growth. The brain equates predictability with safety, even when that predictability is harmful. This is a psychological pattern, not a spiritual sign. When you stay in an environment long enough, you adapt to it. You learn its rhythms. You anticipate its reactions. You memorize its expectations. Even if it restricts you, at least you understand it. You know how to survive within it. You know what to say and what not to say. You know how to adjust yourself to maintain temporary peace. But survival is not the same as alignment. Nostalgia is not proof of alignment. Nostalgia is emotional editing. It removes friction and preserves familiarity. It convinces you that things were not that bad. It highlights the comfort while minimizing the cost. It tempts you to believe that returning would restore stability, when in reality, it would restore limitation. When you elevate, you step into uncertainty. And uncertainty can feel threatening because it does not offer immediate reassurance. There is no established routine yet. There is no proven outcome. There is no familiar pattern to rely on. Growth requires navigation without a full map, and that is uncomfortable. When the future is not fully visible, the past begins to look attractive. Not because it was healthy, but because it was predictable. You knew the dynamics. You knew the roles. You knew what to expect. Even the dysfunction had structure. But predictable does not mean peaceful. Predictable dysfunction is still dysfunction. Predictable limitation is still limitation. Predictable disrespect is still disrespect. The mind confuses familiarity with harmony, but harmony does not require self-suppression. Think carefully about what you are actually missing. Are you missing peace, or are you missing predictability? Are you missing alignment, or are you missing the comfort of knowing how to operate within a system that constrained you? There is a difference. The environment you left no longer matches who you are becoming. Growth changes compatibility. When you evolve, your tolerance shifts. What you once accepted now feels restrictive. What you once justified now feels misaligned. What you once endured now feels unnecessary. Returning would not feel the same as it did before. If you went back today, you would see it differently. The same conversations would irritate you faster. The same limitations would feel tighter. The same expectations would feel heavier. Why? Because you have changed. You cannot unknow what you now understand. You cannot unsee what you now recognize. You cannot reverse awareness. To return would require contraction. Contraction is the opposite of growth. It would require lowering your standards. It would require silencing your expanded perspective. It would require pretending that your new clarity does not exist. It would require shrinking your vision to fit an environment that no longer expands with you. And shrinking always carries a cost. The cost may not be immediate. At first, it might feel relieving. The familiarity might soothe you temporarily. The routine might calm your anxiety. But eventually, the tension would return. The same dissatisfaction would surface. The same restlessness would grow, because you would be out of alignment. Alignment is not about comfort. It is about congruence. It is about matching your internal growth with your external environment. When those two are mismatched, friction is inevitable. You cannot grow internally while regressing externally without feeling divided. The version of you who left was ready for expansion. The version of you now is even more aware. To go back would require ignoring that awareness. It would require convincing yourself that less is enough. It would require compromising on boundaries you worked hard to establish. Ask yourself this honestly. Are you missing what you left? Or are you simply uncomfortable with where you are heading? There is a difference between longing and fear. Sometimes the desire to go back is not about love for the past. It is about fear of the unknown. The unknown demands confidence. It demands patience. It demands trust in your evolution. The past demands nothing new from you. It only demands repetition. Repetition is easy. Expansion is demanding. But you were not moved forward to repeat cycles. You were moved forward to break them. The discomfort you feel now is not a sign that you chose incorrectly. It is a sign that you are in transition. Transition is unstable by nature. It lacks the solid footing of familiarity. It requires balance before stability forms. This in-between space can feel lonely. It can feel disorienting. You are no longer who you were, but you are not fully settled into who you are becoming. In that space, the past can feel inviting, but invitation does not equal instruction. Just because the door remains open does not mean you are meant to walk back through it. Sometimes the door stays open simply to test whether you have truly moved on. Going back would require shrinking your expectations, shrinking your boundaries, shrinking your vision, shrinking your growth to fit into a space that once felt large, but now feels small. Growth changes scale. What once felt expansive can begin to feel confined. What once felt sufficient can begin to feel inadequate. This is not arrogance, it is evolution. You are not better than your past environment. You are simply different from it now. And difference changes compatibility. Imagine placing a fully grown tree back into a small pot it once fit in as a sapling. The roots would be compressed. The growth would stall. The structure would weaken. The pot did not change. The tree did. You are that tree. The environment did not suddenly improve. Your memory softened. Your fear intensified. Your uncertainty magnified the illusion of safety. But illusion does not equal reality. Safety that requires self-reduction is not safety. Peace that demands silence of your growth is not peace. Stability that limits your expansion is not stability. The past is familiar, but familiarity alone is not a valid reason to return. You left because something in you refused to remain small. Something in you refused to tolerate misalignment. Something in you demanded more clarity, more space, more growth. That voice did not disappear. It evolved. Listen to the version of you who had the courage to leave. That version saw what you now romanticize. That version endured what you now soften. That version felt the weight that you now conveniently forget. Trust that decision. Growth is not linear comfort. It is progressive expansion. And expansion always feels unstable before it feels natural. The temptation to go back is strongest when the new foundation has not fully formed. But that does not mean the old foundation was stronger. It only means it was familiar. And familiar is easy to mistake for safe. Do not confuse predictability with peace. Do not confuse nostalgia with alignment. Do not confuse temporary discomfort with permanent misdirection. The past has not improved, you have. And because you have, returning would require you to become smaller than you are now. Going back would require shrinking. Before every breakthrough, there is a test. Not a dramatic announcement, not a visible sign in the sky, not a clear warning that says, this is your final evaluation. The test is subtle. It blends into your life. It looks ordinary. It feels familiar. And that is precisely why it is powerful. And that test often looks like an opportunity to go backward. Right when you begin gaining clarity, something from your past resurfaces. Right when you start building momentum, something old knocks on the door. Right when you feel yourself stepping into a stronger version of who you are, the very patterns you outgrew begin to reappear. Old relationships resurface. A message appears. A conversation reopens. An apology arrives. The tone feels softer. The memory feels warmer. The dynamic seems less intense than before. Old habits feel tempting again. The routines you broke suddenly look comforting. The behaviors you disciplined yourself away from begin to whisper that one more time will not hurt. The mindset you worked hard to shift tries to negotiate a return. Old emotional patterns reappear. Doubt shows up in a familiar voice. Insecurity echoes with recognizable language. Fear of the unknown disguises itself as logic. The internal dialogue that once limited you tries to regain influence. And here is the critical truth. This does not mean you are off track. It means you are close to expansion. When you approach a new level, the old system activates one last time. Think of it as a final audit, a final assessment of whether you are truly ready for the elevation you claim to want. The old system does not disappear quietly. It makes one more attempt to re-establish familiarity. It tries to pull you back into a cycle you already mastered. Cycles are comfortable because they are known. You know how they start. You know how they escalate. You know how they end. Even if they were painful, they were predictable. Breaking a cycle introduces unpredictability. It introduces new terrain. It introduces the possibility of greater reward, but also the responsibility of greater discipline. So the system tests you. It offers you what you once desired. It presents what you once tolerated. It invites you to return to a version of yourself that required less courage. Not because it is better, but because it is familiar. The question is not whether the opportunity appears. The question is whether you have changed. This is where many people misunderstand the process of growth. They assume that once they outgrow something, it will never show up again. But true transformation is not proven by avoidance, it is proven by response. If the old relationship resurfaces and you respond the same way, the lesson remains incomplete. If the old habit tempts you and you surrender again, the growth is not yet integrated. If the old emotional pattern triggers you and you spiral as before, the identity shift has not fully stabilized. But if the opportunity appears and you respond differently, the lesson is complete. That is why regression feels so convincing at this stage. It does not show up as obvious sabotage. It shows up as familiarity. It shows up as comfort. It shows up as something you once cared about, something you once believed you needed. And because you once valued it, it feels meaningful. But meaning and alignment are not the same. If you go back now, you reset the lesson. Growth is cumulative, but it is also conditional. Each level builds upon the discipline of the previous one. If you retreat to an earlier pattern, you interrupt the momentum you created. You do not erase your progress entirely, but you delay it. You add unnecessary repetition to a lesson you already understood. Momentum matters more than motivation. In moments of expansion, momentum is fragile. It depends on consistent forward movement. It depends on small decisions aligning with your new identity. Regression feels easier in the moment because it reduces uncertainty. It reduces tension. It offers instant familiarity. But it costs momentum. Momentum is what carries you into the next level before doubt has time to take over. Momentum is what strengthens your confidence. Momentum is what builds new neural pathways, new habits, new standards. When you interrupt that forward movement, you create friction. You feel that friction internally. You may experience temporary relief, but it is followed by dissatisfaction. You may feel comfort, but it is accompanied by self-awareness that you compromised. That internal tension is not punishment, it is feedback. It is your evolved identity resisting contraction. This stage is what can be called a threshold moment. A threshold is a boundary between what was and what is becoming. It is not fully inside the old space, and it is not fully settled into the new one. It is the doorway, and doorways are unstable places to stand. On one side you have familiarity, on the other you have potential. The threshold is where temptation feels strongest because both options are visible. If you step backward, you regain predictability. If you step forward, you embrace uncertainty. But only one direction leads to expansion. Understand this clearly. The resurfacing of old patterns is not coincidence. It is confirmation that you are near a breakthrough. The closer you get to transformation, the more intense the pull of regression can feel. This is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign of proximity. Breakthrough requires proof. Not proof to others, but proof to yourself. Proof that you are no longer the person who needed that environment. Proof that you can stand firm in your growth. Proof that your standards are not situational. Standards that disappear under pressure were never standards, they were preferences. The final test reveals whether your transformation is rooted or reactive. Reactive growth fades when circumstances shift. Rooted growth remains steady even when temptation returns. You are being asked a silent question. Have you truly outgrown this? Or did you simply distance yourself from it? Distance can create temporary clarity, but only discipline creates permanent change. When the old system activates, it is measuring your stability. It is observing whether you will repeat the cycle or close it permanently. The same conversation may occur, the same opportunity may arise, the same emotional trigger may surface, but you are not the same. And that difference must be demonstrated through choice. If you respond differently, the cycle dissolves. If you maintain your boundary, the test ends. If you move forward despite discomfort, the door behind you closes naturally. But if you hesitate and step back in, the lesson restarts. This is why regression is dangerous, not because it destroys you, but because it delays you. It consumes time, it drains energy, it reintroduces confusion you already resolved. It forces you to relearn what you already knew. Expansion requires decisive movement. Decisiveness does not mean arrogance, it means clarity. It means recognizing that comfort is not always alignment. It means trusting that the version of you who left had valid reasons. You are not being punished by the reappearance of the past, you are being evaluated by it. Evaluation precedes elevation. Think about every major advancement in your life. There was always a moment when quitting felt easier. There was always a point where returning felt simpler than continuing. And in those moments, your choice determined your trajectory. This is no different. The fact that regression feels accessible means growth is within reach. The tension you feel is not misdirection, it is pressure. And pressure builds capacity when handled correctly. You are at a threshold moment. Threshold moments are defining not because of their drama, but because of their subtlety. No one may know you are being tested. No one may see the internal debate. No one may understand the weight of the decision. But you do. And your future responds to what you choose now. Forward movement will feel uncertain. It will require faith in your growth. It will demand patience as the new foundation stabilizes. But it preserves momentum. It preserves alignment. It preserves identity. Regression will feel easier. It will feel justified. It will feel temporarily comforting. But it resets the lesson. And you did not come this far to repeat what you already mastered. This is the doorway. Step through it. Do not step back. Once you have seen clearly, you cannot return blindly. There is a moment in every transformation where the veil lifts. You see the pattern. You see the limitation. You see the compromise you were making. You see the ways you were shrinking to maintain comfort. And once that clarity settles in, something irreversible happens inside you. You are no longer operating from confusion. You are operating from awareness. Awareness changes everything. You cannot unlearn awareness. You cannot unknow what you now understand. You cannot convince yourself that the red flags you identified were harmless. You cannot pretend that the misalignment you felt was imaginary. You cannot silence the voice that guided you out once it has already proven to be accurate. If you attempt to go back, you will feel the friction immediately. It will not feel like home. It will feel tight. It will feel restrictive. It will feel like trying to force yourself into an identity that no longer fits. The same conversations will irritate you faster. The same dynamics will exhaust you more quickly. The same limitations will feel heavier than they did before. Why? Because you have evolved. Evolution creates incompatibility with former environments. Growth stretches your perspective. It expands your tolerance for possibility and reduces your tolerance for limitation. What once felt acceptable now feels constraining. What once felt stable now feels stagnant. You cannot shrink your vision without betraying your growth. And betrayal of growth is one of the most uncomfortable experiences you can have. It creates internal conflict. You may look stable on the outside, but inside you will feel restless. You may appear comfortable, but internally you will feel compromised. You may tell yourself it is easier this way, but a part of you will know you settled. That internal tension is not weakness, it is alignment resisting contraction. Each new level requires leaving behind a former version of yourself. This is not optional, it is structural. The version of you who tolerated less clarity cannot operate at the same time as the version of you who demands transparency. The version of you who accepted minimal standards cannot coexist with the version of you who enforces boundaries. Transformation requires identity shift, and identity shift requires release. Release does not always feel dramatic. Sometimes it feels quiet. Sometimes it feels like simply deciding not to re-engage. Sometimes it feels like declining what you once would have accepted. Sometimes it feels like walking forward without announcement. But once transformation begins, going backward will feel suffocating. It will feel like holding your breath. It will feel like compressing your own potential. It will feel like deliberately choosing less when you know you are capable of more. The discomfort will not be external alone, it will be internal. You would not fit there anymore. This is not about superiority, it is about evolution. A caterpillar cannot return to being a caterpillar once it has become a butterfly. The form has changed, the capacity has changed, the perspective has changed. You are not who you were. You think differently. You respond differently. You perceive differently. Even your silence carries more intention now. Even your standards carry more weight. The old environment might look the same, but you are not the same inside it. And that difference is permanent. There is something powerful about irreversible growth. It removes negotiation. It removes the constant debate between comfort and calling. It removes the illusion that you can evolve without consequence. Growth always carries consequence. The consequence is incompatibility with what no longer aligns. The chosen one does not retreat. Retreat suggests fear. Retreat suggests doubt in the process. Retreat suggests abandoning progress because comfort calls louder than purpose. But purpose does not reverse itself because discomfort appears. Purpose moves forward through uncertainty. The chosen one evolves. Evolution is not loud, it is steady. It is consistent. It is often quiet and unseen. It does not require public validation. It requires private discipline. It requires daily alignment. It requires choosing forward movement even when no one applauds the effort. When you understand this, the temptation to go back loses its power, because you realize that returning would not restore who you were. It would only create friction between who you are and where you would be standing. Destiny does not move in reverse. Destiny unfolds through progression. It builds layer upon layer. It expands through commitment. It does not retract because the path becomes challenging. It does not collapse because the unknown feels intimidating. It responds to alignment, not to fear. Alignment requires commitment. Commitment is not emotional, it is structural. It is the decision to remain consistent with your evolution, even when nostalgia attempts to interfere. It is the refusal to betray your awareness. It is the understanding that temporary discomfort is not a reason to abandon long-term expansion. Your next level demands irreversible movement forward. Irreversible movement does not mean perfection. It does not mean you will never feel doubt. It does not mean you will never miss aspects of the past. It means that even when doubt appears, you do not reverse direction. Even when nostalgia surfaces, you do not abandon growth. Even when uncertainty feels overwhelming, you do not collapse back into familiarity. Irreversible movement is a mindset. It says that forward is the only direction available. It says that expansion is not optional. It says that identity has shifted permanently. It says that retreat is no longer compatible with who you are becoming. There is strength in that kind of finality. When you remove the option of going back, you free your energy to focus on building what is ahead. When retreat is no longer a possibility, creativity increases, strategy sharpens, discipline stabilizes. Your mind stops negotiating with old comforts and starts investing fully in new foundations. This is maturity in motion. You are not being forced forward, you are choosing forward, and that choice compounds over time. Each day you remain aligned reinforces the new identity. Each moment you resist regression strengthens the internal structure of growth. Eventually, the thought of going back will not even feel tempting. It will feel incompatible. It will feel like an outdated version of you, calling from a distance you have already surpassed. That is the sign of irreversible transformation. You do not need to announce it. You do not need to dramatize it. You simply live it. You simply move with it. You simply refuse to betray what you now know. You have seen clearly. You have understood deeply. You have evolved permanently. And because of that, your movement forward must be irreversible. You have come too far to go back. Pause and really let that settle in. Think about the nights you wrestled with doubt. Think about the boundaries you forced yourself to set when it would have been easier to stay silent. Think about the habits you broke, the patterns you confronted, the fears you challenged. None of that was accidental. None of that was light work. Growth demanded something from you. Discipline demanded something from you. Separation demanded something from you. You endured too much growth to repeat old cycles. Cycles are comfortable because they are known, but you did not fight to become aware just to return to ignorance. You did not expand your standards just to lower them again. You did not build new strength just to surrender it at the first wave of nostalgia. Every lesson you absorbed cost you something. Time, energy, tears, silence, courage. Do not discount that cost. What lies ahead of you is greater than what you left behind. The past may feel familiar, but familiarity is not destiny. The future may feel uncertain, but uncertainty is often the doorway to elevation. Just because you cannot see every detail ahead does not mean there is nothing waiting for you. Expansion often hides behind temporary instability. The discomfort you feel now is expansion, not misalignment. Growth stretches you. It challenges your identity. It demands that you operate at a level you have not fully stabilized in yet. That stretch can feel like instability. It can feel like doubt. It can feel like questioning whether you made the right decision. But discomfort is not always a warning sign. Sometimes it is confirmation that you are outgrowing your former limits. The loneliness you feel now is refinement, not abandonment. When you shift levels, not everyone shifts with you. When your standards rise, some connections fall away. When your awareness deepens, certain conversations no longer resonate. That narrowing is not punishment, it is precision. It is refinement removing what cannot accompany you where you are headed. You are not being isolated, you are being aligned. There is strength in staying forward-focused, even when the past calls your name. There is clarity in recognizing that temptation does not equal instruction. There is power in choosing your evolution repeatedly, especially when no one else sees the internal battle. Going back would cost you the future you prayed for. It would cost you the momentum you built. It would cost you the confidence you regained. It would cost you the alignment you fought to establish. The comfort might be temporary, but the compromise would be permanent. And deep down, you already know that. You did not come this far to reverse direction. Stand firm in what you have become. Trust the version of you who had the courage to walk away. Honor the growth that reshaped you. The next level requires commitment, not reconsideration. If this message confirmed what you already knew, like this video, share it with another chosen one, and subscribe for more powerful messages that keep you moving forward.